On tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin, Mexico is on notice, looking at 91E and the potential threat that it faces for the coast. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for May 27th. Well, here we are, another day with nothing going on in the scene of tropics on this 27th day of May. 26 storms remains the total count for this year so far, and we're currently on Tico's Code Blue for our only feature, which we'll be discussing in just a moment time. Looking at the Atlantic, we are now 5 days until the start of official hurricane season, and there is nothing expected, so pretty much if we do not get anything through the remainder of this duration here, then we could be looking at the ending of a preseason streak that has been there for the last 7 years. In the Eastern Pacific, we have Invest 91E, which is now a 90% chance of formation on this 13th day of the hurricane season there. It could bring some significant impacts to Mexico, although the specifics regarding its track are rather uncertain. We do have a video update that will be coming out on it in several hours. Looking at the Western Pacific, we did have an area of interest that was marked last night, but it seems that all model support has just completely dropped on it, and therefore we're back to looking at nothing active here and nothing expected in the next 5 days either. Looking over into the North Indian Ocean, it's the same picture here. You can see that there is nothing active and nothing expected in the next 5 days. We've probably hit the peak for this season, so anything from this point on, it'll probably be during the second peak in the fall. So with that said, here's a look at the Atlantic satellite imagery. You can see that there's not much going on right now. You see an extratropical disturbance in the United States, another disturbance that's turning extratropical or something like that in the northern Atlantic, and then of course not really much of anything else going on where we've had some tropical waves coming off the African coast. We could see a few more in the coming days. In the Eastern Pacific, it's kind of hard to see 91E. It's on the eastern side of the map. You'll have to take a look at the Atlantic imagery again. But other than that, there's not really much else going on. The other disturbance that was being monitored for development has pretty much died at this point, entering unfavorable conditions that are no longer going to be able to sustain any kind of development in the near future. The Central Pacific, of course, looking devoid of literally anything. In the Western Pacific, you can see it's looking quite messy there, with nothing expected to form out of the monsoonal mess that we're seeing stretching from the Philippines all the way to pretty much the right side of your screen here. There's also been some clouds that have been continuing to go through Japan and some of the islands. In the North Indian Ocean, it's basically the same story here. Not really much of anything going on, but of course we're now past the first peak and things are now setting up for the summer. Here's a close-up of Invest 91E, and you can see it's developing rather nicely. Blobs of convection bursting from the center, which is always what you want to be seeing from a developing tropical cyclone. We could be looking at heavy rain. The future track of this is relatively uncertain. We could be looking at a landfall Mexico, or this could push west or low to the coast. We don't know too much at this time, but sea surface temperatures are looking good regardless. 28 to 30 degrees Celsius. If it passes west of Mexico, where we'll start to deal with those cooler temperatures. In the Atlantic, we're looking at 27 to 28 at this point in the Gulf of Mexico. In the Eastern Atlantic, we're starting to see some of those 28s nudge their way in, although it's a little bit too far south for where things typically develop. In the subtropics, we're looking around 24 to 25 degrees Celsius still. Those are going to continue to warm up as we head closer to the actual meat of the season. In the North Indian Ocean, it's around 29 to 30 degrees Celsius throughout much of the basin. Same can be said for the South China Sea. They're seeing a lot of temperatures around 29 to 30, especially near the Philippines. East of the Philippines, it's around 28 to maybe 29 degrees Celsius. And north of Taiwan, we're looking at those much cooler temperatures around 25 to 26 degrees Celsius. And in the southern hemisphere, those temperatures are around 27 to 28, although those warmer waters are going to be, of course, receding now that we are now past the end of the southern hemisphere season. Here to look at the temperature anomalies, and the La Nina is clearly in full swing and going to stay that way for the next several months. The Atlantic is looking pretty warm, especially in the western Atlantic. The eastern Pacific looking relatively cool, especially across the eastern portion of the central Pacific. Western Pacific and northwestern Pacific are looking above average as well. North Indian Ocean looking around average. On this day in 2012, we were looking at a tropical storm Beryl, which was barreling towards the Florida coastline after recently turning tropical. It was the second preseason storm of 2012 and would eventually be part of a 19-storm season, the most significant being Sandy, of course. But it's another good year to look at when we're looking at this year's activity, given the fact that this was also a third-year La Nina. So just noting that out there. You can find more of our On This Day products powered by Cyclone History, and of course this image was edited by our very own talented Isaac Gomez. Well, that brings us over to the next names in the Atlantic. The first two names are Alex and Bonnie. In the Eastern Pacific, we're probably about to get Agatha soon, followed by Bloss. And in the Central Pacific, while Buzz Lightyear may be telling you infinity and beyond, we're waiting to see how far beyond we must go in order to get Hone. In the Western Pacific, we're looking out for Chaba, followed by Irie, and in the North Indian Ocean, the next two names, whenever they do form, is Citrang and Mandus. We're probably not going to be seeing those two names for quite some time. Worth noting, the next name after that is Moko, which I really don't understand why that is actually named, but sure, why not? In the Australian region, we're looking out for Darien. In the Southwest Indian Ocean, we're looking out for Lalama. And in the South Pacific, we're looking out for Halley. We'll be back for another Tropical Weather Bulletin tomorrow night.